Hey, we're here today talking about the Walk with Wisdom virtual retreat and really what the Wisdom Walk practice is all about. So, I'm talking with Dawn Poteau because she experienced the Walk with Wisdom virtual retreat recently, and I thought it might be helpful if you actually heard from someone other than myself about what the retreat and the practice is all about. Dawn is the founder of Talent Activators, which specializes in helping individuals and organizations activate their talent resources. She does that with her expertise in leadership development, coaching, project management, succession planning, and change management. And really, she provides all of the tools for individuals to take their careers to the next level while also giving organizations the tools they need to best leverage the talent of their people. So welcome, Dom. So glad to have you here today.
Oh yeah, it's
Yeah.
my specialty right now, and where I'm really focusing is helping leaders that are falling into new roles, whether it's coming into an organization from the outside, or maybe they've experienced a change within the organization.
Oh my gosh. Well, and I understand too, you have a global experience as well, right? It's like your vision is also like pretty global, like different cultures and just what happens in a complex organization.
Yes, so
So,
I've been fortunate to work in global organizations throughout my career. I've helped leaders do transition in many parts of the world, and
yeah,
help put the strategy together for them and executing it. So it's a
yeah,
passion area. It's also personally, I love travel, so missing a little bit of it
right.
right now, but we'll get
I
back to it.
know. I know. Well, so here's what I find fascinating is that oftentimes, like the work that we do, we can have this like bigger perspective and see things really clearly for other people. And yet, sometimes when we're faced with our own challenges, it gets a little like the waters get a little muddied sometimes, where we're just like, oh gosh, I have to get this right. I have to, like, I see these opportunities and I just don't know which path to take. And I know, like, I think when we met, like when our paths crossed, there was something like that going on for
Mhm.
you as well. And so I was hoping maybe today, if you wouldn't mind, just sharing a little bit about um, what was happening for you in your world right before the wisdom walk
Sure.
that you had gone on.
Yeah. So if we go back to the spring of 2020, I had just returned from California, where I had gone through cultural intelligence training with the Cultural Intelligence Institute. They're out of Grand Rapids, Michigan. And it was a great experience. And then this crazy thing called COVID happened. So I was still in the process of making a real final decision. Was I going to start my own business, or was I going to go back into a corporate role? And I was doing interviews with different companies, considering my options, and also getting some interest from organizations about partnering with them on different projects. Like I mentioned, the Cultural Intelligence Center. And I really needed to make a decision, which direction and path was I going to take. So that landed us in May, where we met through ICF, and then we had some conversation. And the wisdom walk for me, because I'm really open to different things, and I've been fortunate throughout my life and my career to experience a lot of different activities that get people thinking outside their comfort zone.
Mhm.
I was really intrigued and have done work with shamans, and understand a little bit of the Native American traditions, and taking the time. And I haven't been in a sweat lodge yet. Might do that someday. So I was just
Yeah.
intrigued about how this tied back to some roots from the Native American culture, and just really intrigued. So it was, yeah, it came at the right time for me when I was contemplating some decisions for myself, and I don't think I could necessarily see it clearly at the moment. And then going through the process that you and I and a few others went through together was a great experience
Yeah.
for me to explore some of that and make
Yeah.
really get clear on the questions that I had in my head.
Mhm. I'm glad it was a really good experience for you that you had some of that clarity come forward. Um, and it's interesting too, having, like, as you had mentioned, the practice does pull on a few different traditions, whether you call it shamanic or ancient teachings, ancient wisdom. I think it's always fascinating that oftentimes we can meld a lot of different practices together to find, answers on our own. And um, so I'm curious to, there's a way that I describe the wisdom walk, but I'd love to hear it in your language as well. Like if you were to describe it to somebody that you've just met, um, and they said, okay, what is this thing called this wisdom walk practice? How would
Well,
you describe it to them?
well, I think I have described it to many people
So,
because I keep pushing people to have a conversation with you about it because I think it's a
yeah.
really great experience. So how I've described it to people is, there's a lot of things that, it's kind of, you're going out with that initial intention of answering a question for yourself. And we all have a question in our head. There might be something that's going on that's triggering us to want to take this walk. There may be nothing, but just a couple of different things that are going on that you formulate the question. And I think what I've explained to people is, we take walks, every day, maybe different walks now than we have in our past, but I have a trail near my house that I go on a regular basis. And I did choose for this time to go to a different place, just, to have that experience. But I think it was great to get out in nature and, having the intention of the question, but nothing else. And just going through that experience and then coming back and having the conversation with the small group that we had to mirror and hear them make observations tied to my question was a really
Yeah.
interesting process, and had some of those aha moments listening to other people tell their story and point out things that sometimes, as you mentioned earlier, we're too close to and we can't always see it. So having other people play the role of the observer when you're going through that was, I think, really powerful. And then of course,
Mhm.
your help in coaching us through the conversation and that journey was a great experience. So yeah, I've told a lot of people about the walk and said, look, if you're contemplating something, or maybe there's just something that keeps happening, a reoccurring theme that you just want to get some clarity on, it's a great way
Yeah.
to do it. And it's just interesting the things that you observe on the walk that you may not have any other time, because I think we sometimes go out very mindless in our walks.
Mhm.
I know myself, I'm notorious for putting on an audible book and listening to the book and ignoring what's around me and not listening to the sounds and feeling the fresh air and the sun. And
Mhm.
I think it was great to just be mindless for, and mindful at the same time.
True, very true, right? And I heard you say too, it's just, I think some of the ahas were being in that circle and being seen and heard in a different way, and even seeing and hearing others in a different or maybe a deeper way
Yeah.
as well. That alone sounded like it could be really beneficial.
Well, I think that's part of why I love being a coach myself, and I'm sure you do as well,
Mhm.
is, I come from this belief when I coach clients that we have the answers within, and that my role as a coach, and I think the role that you were facilitating for us too, is to really just help us tap into it. And sometimes we just need somebody outside of our own head
Yeah.
to be that mirror for us, reflect back, and ask us the tough questions that make us dig deep, because we don't sometimes just take a breath, pause, and reflect.
Mhm.
And so I think that's a
Yeah.
valuable part of any experience like this, or when you're going through coaching. And I think that's again where I've seen coaching be very powerful in my life, and where I've seen it be very
Mhm.
powerful with my clients in their lives.
Yeah. So, tell me a little more about in what ways did the experience of the wisdom walk help, like, expand your perspective on your situation, or I'll just leave it at that. Expand your perspective on the situation.
Well, I think for me, it wasn't so much expansion, it was just
Mhm.
clarification. And it was something that I felt like I kind of knew the answer to, but at the end of the walk and going through the process, it just gave me that clarity that I needed, that the path I was meant to be on was to start talent activators 100%, and not make it, something I dabbled in and continued to look for something else, but to put my 100% focus in that direction. And that was really what I was meant to do.
Oh, and
So,
that sounds big. I
yeah.
mean, that was a pretty pivotal moment. Like, I'm all in,
Yeah.
right?
Yep. And I
Wow.
know, like I said, there were a lot of other things that were culminating at that time, but it really did help provide that clarification that I needed.
Oh, fantastic. So now that you are all in
Yeah.
talent activators, what's possible for you now that wasn't possible for you maybe earlier in the year?
I think I'm still discovering that.
Okay.
I'm still new.
Yeah.
That was, I
Yep.
think, the middle to end of May that we did the walk.
Right.
So it's now,
Yeah.
late
Yeah.
September, and
Yep.
it's just been a few months. So I think I'm still discovering what's possible, but I
Mhm.
think just having the clarity so I wasn't, you know, feeling like I needed to be in a different direction and I was missing out on something. It just, was
Right.
good for me to get that clarification. Like I said, I was probably a little further along in making my decision, but I just needed that nudge,
Mm-hmm.
push. And like you said, to
Yeah.
be seen and heard by others as I explained what I was going through, what I observed
Right.
on my walk, that really helped provide that clarification. And I
Yeah.
think, I'm also a believer in synchronicity and that things happen exactly the way they're supposed to
Yeah.
when they do. And, certain things that I observed may have been there weeks
Mhm.
before, but I wouldn't have seen it because I wasn't open to it at the time.
Oh man, so that sounded really pretty important too. Like just being open, being willing to try something new,
Yeah.
even if you think you kind of know what it is, but that willingness to try something new,
Yeah.
and then opening your mind to just
I think
saying,
you remember one of the silly, it's not silly, but I call it silly stories, was at the very beginning of my walk. There was a girl running towards me, very, young and energetic. And she had this t-shirt that said, "Life is good." And it was this rainbow. And it made me smile. And it was just a reminder that life truly is good. And that and a few other things I observed on the walk just really
right,
came together and told me the story I was needing to hear.
right, yeah. And isn't it funny? I mean, had you gone on a walk but had put your earphones in and listened to an audible book, you might not have seen that in the same way or with a
Yeah, I might have
message,
seen a girl running, but I wouldn't have observed the t-shirt
right?
and noticed those things and put that together with other things that came along
Yeah.
the path.
Right? Well, I think that's part of the beauty in this practice, though, too, right? It's like when we're faced with that challenge or just something that it's so complex, right? We're just moving through all of this minutia. It's hard to sort that out, and our brain gets clogged
Yeah,
up with so much stuff that um, if we can look at things with fresh eyes or in a new perspective, all of a sudden it's as if like different neural pathways start coming online
exactly.
for us, and you can see things more creatively and think more innovatively.
Yeah.
And we keep hearing so much about that, especially this year, right? Gotta pivot and be more innovative than ever before.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's the interesting intersection for the work you and I both do with leaders. And, I think to myself now with helping individuals as they, I'll call it, assimilate into their new roles,
Yeah.
that, things like a wisdom walk could be a really great thing for them. And it could be a great thing for their teams. And particularly when I think about doing a strategy session and the team's faced with a big challenge, or there's that, BHAG, we call it, that big, hairy,
Mm-hmm.
audacious goal that we are trying to set for ourselves and our teams, and getting some time to just be quiet and reflective. I think that, a wisdom walk can have application there too.
Oh, absolutely. It has, right? And there's lots of different ways we can play with this particular practice, right? I mean, you
Right.
and I both know like there's so many different tools you can use, and we might just share it in one way, but it doesn't mean that that is the only way
Right.
to use it.
Yeah.
Um, so thank you so much for sharing your story.
No
And just
problem.
having this discussion too. I love just sharing the ideas back and forth. And, again, the work that we do is it's transformational, and it's sometimes really challenging to describe what that transformation looks like. But,
Yeah.
what I heard you say is that it's also part of this practice and this tool is it can be a way to either help jumpstart something or just kind of help you shift your perspective, and yet the unfolding continues. It is not a one-time practice. You do this and miraculously like you're going to know it all. There's
No.
an unfolding that takes place and transformation, and I
Yeah.
hear and I see it in you as well.
Well, and everybody's on their own journey. So what one, what my experience was or is completely different than somebody else.
True.
And I think, there's no hurt in taking an hour's walk and seeing what you might find out.
Exactly. Here,
So
here.
yeah, so it's not like it's a huge, investment that you're having to get on a plane or, take a
Mhm.
week off,
Right.
taking a couple hours for yourself in a day,
Yeah.
it's well worth it.
Oh, fantastic. So, John, if there's a way for others to connect with you, what's the best way for them to do that?
Sure. So I have a website, talentactivators.com,
Okay.
or my email, which is dawn@talentactivators.com as well. So that's usually the best way. I'm pretty out there on LinkedIn, so you can
Mhm.
find me easily there.
Okay.
So yeah, that
Oh,
would be the best way, but
well, thanks. Well,
definitely
and thank
connect.
you for, I'm so glad that you have decided to go all in with Talent
Yes.
Activators. You
Me
are
too.
a powerhouse. You know your stuff, and not just your stuff, but you know how to connect with people. And what I have witnessed, and since knowing you too, is that the way you not only just activate people's talent, but you activate others to connect with one
Yeah.
another too. And so
Connecting is
you're,
really important for me. It's been a big part of who I am, and I love to connect people and help, you know, learn about one another. So that's why